Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Hira Salim, Marketing Executive for Morgan McKinley UK. We're delighted to welcome back Susan Hayes-Culleton to present her first Success Series webinar this year with Morgan McKinley, in conjunction with our Women in Finance series entitled Take Control of Your Finances in 2014. Women in Finance is a networking group for women at all levels of their career to encourage, develop and highlight issues surrounding their everyday working lives. As future leaders in business, we felt that there was a need for like-minded women to get together and share problems and knowledge, as well as mentor those at the beginning of their career or be mentored themselves. We hope you enjoy the webinar, and please join the conversation on Twitter at Morgan McKinley using hashtag Success Series and hashtag Career Ally. I'll now pass over to Susan.
Thank you very much, Hira, and I'm delighted to be here this evening at the Morgan McKinley offices in London to present to you with a view to helping all of the viewers out there tuning in who want to take control of their finances. So this evening, we're going to start with goal setting and how most people get it so inherently wrong, and then deal with the barriers. I'm going to give you a turbo boosting technique, which is a powerful procrastination killer, and then I'm going to focus on making more money using an efficient way before answering some questions. Time constrains me from taking you through some other ideas, but I'm delighted to say that in conjunction with Morgan McKinley, I will be speaking at various different events, both across the UK and across the globe this year. So please check out morganmckinley.co.uk for details of dates and locations. So let's get started. So first of all, what is it that I am about? Well, I have co-authored a Leaving Cert economics textbook, and Leaving Cert is the exam that you do at 18 years of age in Ireland with 2 teachers, and that's called Positive Economics. I'm known as the Positive Economist because I prefer to focus upon what you can do rather than solely look at the GDP and the other macro figures that we can have little effect over. I'm Managing Director of Hayes-Culleton Limited, and basically we deliver financial markets, economics and entrepreneurship training to corporates and organisations in Ireland, the UK, the US and Malta. And finally, I have also published 2 of my own books. The first one is called In Line with Women in Finance, Savvy Woman's Guide to Financial Freedom, and just a couple of weeks ago I also published Savvy Guide to Making More Money. Now, that's plenty about me. It's far more important to speak about you this evening. So first of all, goal setting. What happens and what do people do? Well, what I often hear over and over again are goals like this. I would love to have to not worry about money. I'd love to have no more debt. I'd love to be able to go on nice holidays. And they're usually followed with the sigh of putting each and every one of these goals on the never, never. The thing is, you see, all of these goals, unfortunately, are destined to fail. And why is that? Well, if, for example, I'm at home and I'm making the dinner and my sole thought is not about making money, well then I'm not worrying about money, so therefore I've achieved that goal, haven't I? Or no more debt. Well, if I have no more debt and I have 0 euros or pounds or dollars in my account, does that mean I've achieved financial freedom? And if I'm able to go on nice holidays, well, to some people, going for a walk in the park is a break. They're not necessarily talking about anything else. The problem is, of course, that these goals are not quantifiable. They're not, you will not know when you actually achieve them. So instead, what I would suggest you do is completely revolutionize your financial freedom goal and putting a number on it, and also making it so that the goalposts don't move and that is very easy to spot when you've arrived at them. So for example, instead of saying that you'd rather not worry about money, how about let's change that to, I would make £50,000 income after tax every year and have £20,000 savings. Now, to some of you joining me here this evening, this is going to be too lofty an ideal. To some of you, it wouldn't even cover a couple of months in your lifestyle. Well, it's not the point about the number. The fact is that it is a number. It's a quantifiable goal that you know you can achieve. And of course, that's what the remainder of the webinar is going to be about, is the how do you do that. Instead of saying that you simply don't want any more debt, how about saying, well, what you'd rather do is have a maximum expenditure of 80% of your income, and therefore you never again need a reason to fall back into debt. And instead of saying just being able to go on nice holidays, quantify how much would you need for that holiday. So for example, I would like £2,000 per year totally in the kitty left to spend on holidays, whatever that might be. And again, it's not the numbers that are important here, but the fact that they are numbers. Now, every single time after this, that I either spend less or that I save more, I'm moving in the direction of these goals. So if £50,000 a year of an income seems very, very high, well then think about what could you do about it. So for example, could you do a course to increase the value of your offering or the value of your labour? Could you talk to a recruitment consultant, for example, Mark and McKinley, to say, this is my income goal, what would I need to do in order to move my career in the direction of it? Could you set up a savings plan so that every month £300 out of your wages goes by direct debit or standing order into a savings account, so that although £20,000 consists of a lot of £300, you're on your way? And that's what you need to do in order to create really, really positive, clear, emphatic, and much, much easier to move towards in terms of financial freedom goals. So let's get it all out in the open and let's see, why is this not possible? By the way, that I can imagine are your thoughts, but they're certainly not mine. And some of the ones that I've come across are, I just can't do it, I'm really bad with money, I've no time, isn't there a recession on? Well, what I do is when I come up with ideas, some of these rejections here are completely in your head. For example, I can't do it. Well, why can't you do it? There's been millions of other people have achieved the goals that I stated on the last slide. Why can't you be one of them? So some of them are simply in your head. They're limiting beliefs. They're issues that basically, that they're nothing to do with external, but instead there are something that you need to think about and to consider and to basically get over. But then there are other ones where, for example, you say, I'm really bad with money. Well, I hear that over and over and over again. But making money and managing money isn't something that is just bestowed upon some positive elite, but instead it is available as a skill for everybody if we want to learn how to do it. So for example, in order to deal with this particular issue, maybe you could write down 5 techniques that you could use in order to be better with money. As I mentioned, the direct debit, so that you've got a savings plan set up before you even start to spend on your money. Maybe you could learn budgeting techniques, or maybe there's a couple of other ideas that I have in this webinar this evening that will put you on a much better path. The main thing I'm saying is that it's important to get the objections that you have in your head out and on paper. Me personally, I use the GROW model. G for goal. So what is the goal? What is it that you want to achieve? R for realities. So what's the problem? Like what you see here in front of you. Maybe all of these are the realities of my situation. O for opportunities. What could I do about any one of these? So for example, how could I push out my comfort zone? What could I do to really achieve my life goals? What changes could I make? So those are the opportunities. And then W, the last letter of the acronym, is what am I actually going to do? So W is what am I going to do about it? And the reason that I have this image up here of a diary is because many times the people set out New Year's resolutions and they fail by the second week of January is because they actually don't write down on a daily or a weekly basis how they're going to set out to achieve them. So I might have a wonderful goal of, for example, losing a stone this year. But I actually don't document how I'm going to improve my eating, how I'm going to find healthier recipes, what classes I'm going to do in the gym, how often I'm going to go out for a run. I actually don't put them into the diary. So by the time February comes around, I've completely forgotten I set up my New Year's resolution in the first place. And then when I'm singing Auld Lang Syne on 31st December, I'm back to square one. And that's why I have the image of the diary here. It's important to actually document how you're going to, as I say, push out your comfort zone, achieve your goals, and execute change. Can I also say as well, expect there to be very nice, unexpected surprises along the way, because when you invest good actions with karma, generally it does actually reward you. And finally, this is more a motivational idea than anything else, but every single day in red pen, I write down something I've achieved. Now, some days it can be I've launched a book, it can be I got a new client, it can be I got a great testimonial. But some days I got up at 4 a.m. to get a red-eye flight, and rather than giving in and going to bed in the middle of the day for a cat's-eye nap, I kept going, I kept working through it, and I achieved a monumental amount off my to-do list. That I would put in red pen. Sometimes I just do the right thing. Sometimes I might refer somebody to another client. Sometimes, no matter what it is, but I make sure to write down what I've done thus far. So on the days when you're feeling low, make sure and do that in red pen at the top of your page. Now, the turbo boosting technique I was going to talk about is accountability. To go back to my fitness example, Let's say, for example, it is Tuesday night in the middle of January, it's cold, it's wet, it's rainy, Coronation Street's going to come on, and I just feel like curling up on the couch and doing no more. Does that sound familiar? Well, of course you can't answer me, so I can imagine, though, there's a few nodding heads looking at their computer screen tonight. In fact, there's a couple around me right now. But the point is that on that, isn't it so easy at that point to curl up, you know, and actually sit down, bag of potato, wouldn't that make it all the nicer to sit in with your favourite soap? Now contrast that with your best friend. It comes up to the door, knocks on the door, has her iPad at the ready, has your favourite tunes ready to go and says, come on, come on, come on, I've loads to tell you tonight, let's go for a walk around the block. Well, that is a form of accountability. She is holding you accountable to your New Year's resolution. And what I would say is do the very same thing within your business or personally. For example, could you sit down with the team members in your department or the staff members that you have and set out a goal that you're going to have in January that would be financial, whether it is to increase sales by 10%, to increase retention by 5%, to plan a new event so that you can have another touch point with clients, for example. Can you do any of those? And can I give you a really fantastic app that I've used for this purpose? It's called Trello, T-R-E-L-L-O. And what it does is it's an app that allows you to post different to-do items on a to-do, doing, and done list, and you post up deadlines, and you can post up who is responsible for what. And it's a great way to hold a number of people involved in a project accountable. Or maybe it could just be on a personal basis. Maybe you and your partner, or you and your friend, or you and somebody that you know on a very light basis. Say, for example, I'll give you an example. I have a friend where I meet up with her once every 3 months, and we state 3 different goals that we want to achieve in our business. And what we do is that every month we schedule a conference call and we ask each other how we're getting on. And the reason that we do that is because I am far more motivated to make sure that it's done when I know I'm going to have that call with her rather than if I don't, because of course there's nobody going to hold me accountable apart from the diary, and even that, well, that doesn't have an awful lot of teeth unless I actually implement it myself. So, and also it's great fun actually catching up with her. And I also, and this is actually a picture of me with my friend, as you can see, that is actually my laptop there. We're having a great laugh over a coffee, and what we do is that, that's Sarah is her name, we sit down once a year and we actually have personal goals. So it could be, for example, to join that Pilates class that I keep talking about, to make sure and go for that facial once every 3 months like I keep promising myself but I never get around to. Or in her case, to actually approach her employer about going for that promotion that maybe she wouldn't do if she was on her own. So that's where I use accountability all the time, because it, first of all, it keeps me accountable. It makes sure that I go and actually execute my goals, but also I have the fun of sharing them with somebody who is also as motivated as me. So I'm moving on then from that. I just wanted to put this point in because there's 4 ways to increase sales, okay? The first one is the hardest one, and that is to get new customers. And often we pour our energies into doing something like that. But there's 3 other ways. 1 is to increase the frequency of the purchase. 2 is to increase the size of the purchase. And 3 is to increase the number of referrals that you get. And those last 3 all fall under the realm of retention. Now, there's an oft-quoted statistic that it's 4 times as easy to sell to an existing customer than it is to sell to a new one. So what I would suggest is I'm going to give you 5 prompts to go to your customers, and this is just, just 5 easy ways to go back to them and remind them of your existence and to remind them of how good your offering is. So let's start from the start. Over here on the left-hand side in the red. This one works with somebody where, you've built up a rapport. So a simple thing like, I haven't heard from you in a while and I just thought I'd give you a call. Now that won't work with somebody who hasn't heard from you in 5 years, has no idea who you are, and they've changed jobs. That's just not going to work. But say for example, I've often used this one, and I'm going to say this kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I've often done this where I picked up the phone to somebody in Morgan McKinley and say, haven't heard from you in a while and I just thought I'd give you a call. And actually that very sentence led to the webinar here this evening. I just mentioned it to them, and then we said, well, actually we haven't done anything in a while. And then, just as Sarah mentioned, here we are now giving the first webinar of 2014. I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek because some of them are actually sitting beside me as I'm giving this webinar here this evening. Another one would be just, if this is one where you have a regular client and you haven't again heard from them in a while, it's just to say, we really appreciate your business and we'd like to take you out for lunch. Or, we really appreciate your business and we'd like to offer you a place at an event that we're organising in the next couple of weeks. Or, we really appreciate your business. We've taken a table at XXX Awards, and we'd like to offer you a place because we really do appreciate your business. Another one might be just a token of my or our appreciation of for your continued business. That could be, for example, a calendar, or it could be a book, or it could be a card, or it could be a bunch of flowers, it could be a box of chocolates, a bottle of wine. It doesn't have to be anything expensive, but believe me, there are very few businesses that actually do this, and it can be a really good way to remind people that you care. Another one is, we have a new product or service that might interest you. And of course, you don't actually need a new product or service, but it could be, for example, we have a new series of products coming out next month. We have our autumn collection. We have our Christmas collection. We have a new speaker, whatever it might be, but just something new. For example, what I do every 2 weeks is I send out a new blog post. And even though it is something that is very, well, obviously it's new, it's not a new product or a new service, but it is a new piece of content that I published on the blog, thepositiveeconomist.com. Again, it simply reminds people that we are in business in the business that we are doing. And finally, this one I believe is the most potent of them all. And that is, I was thinking about the work we did for you recently, and I think you could benefit from X. Could I send you something to think about? Now really think about what I'm saying here. I was thinking about the work we did for you recently, aka we really care about what we do, and we treat every customer with utmost respect and due diligence. And I think you could benefit. I really think you could actually benefit from what I'm going to send you. And then the subtle sales message, could I send you something to think about? So it's not a hard sell or anything else. You're genuinely thinking of a way in which you can improve their lives. You're either going to decrease pain or increase pleasure for them. And it's a very soft approach based on, we did work for you before, you were happy with it, and now is there a way that we could progress this? So it's a soft, subtle upsell. So in each of those cases, there are 5 sales triggers, and if there was one thing I would encourage you to do in 2014 is to consider your retentive efforts, because remember, as I say, 4 times easier to sell to somebody that has already bought from you in the past. Because of course, if they've bought from you, they've bought in to you as well. So on that note, I'm going to finish this evening by just saying that as an economist, as a trained economist, I'm often brought into companies to ask to predict the future. But in the words of Peter Drucker, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So on that note, I'm going to go back to her, and I'm just going to ask her if there's been any questions that have come in from those tuning in this evening.
That's right, Susan. We've got a couple. I have one from Osman, an accountant for an SME. He asks, regarding budgeting, how much should you learn to penny pinch for your business? When are you meant to splash out on the big spends?
No disrespect to that poor questioner, but I come out in hives when I hear a term like penny pinching. Penny pinching doesn't work. I have to say it doesn't work for personal, it doesn't work for business, it doesn't work really at all. Penny pinching can often lead to what's called a false economy. So let's just say, for example, I am going to cut all costs by 10%, and in doing so, I inadvertently realize that I can't give the customer service that I used to, and now I lose a big customer. That's a false economy. It looked like I was saving money, but it actually, it ended up cutting revenue as a result. What I would encourage you to do is, rather than penny pinching for your business, is look for ways to be efficient. So, for example, is there a way that you could have the same broadband or the same graphic designer or the same supplier of stationery without compromising on service? So if there's a way of doing that, then you're being more efficient. So you're not saving money just to be saving money. You want to preserve the service and also save money as a result. So what I would encourage is definitely a form of efficiency rather than looking for penny pinching, as he says. And of course, when I say that, for anybody else who has questions, please keep coming them in or sending them in. The second thing that you mentioned is about splashing out. Now, big spends. What I would suggest, the way you consider big spends, is what is the return versus what is the cost. And we have a fancy term in business or economics for that, and that's called cost-benefit analysis. So I'll give you an example of when I was faced with this decision just a couple of months ago. We had an email marketing responder. We had another company which was providing hosting facilities for us. We had another company that was providing our email for us. So what I did was I approached a CRM provider, and that's a customer relationship management provider. And it was going to take an upfront investment, and it was going to be a monthly cost. And the way I looked at this was, okay, what are the benefits, the non-monetary benefits I was going to get from the CRM? What were the costs that I was already spending on each of the other providers? And then I looked at that in comparison to the cost of the upfront cost as well as the monthly fee for the CRM. And I could see that I was actually going to make, or the benefit would be double the cost. So therefore I decided, as I took an executive decision, that I was going to go and invest in CRM. So what I would say is that splashing out our big spends, look at them with that type of quantitative or that kind of forensic approach. What is the return? What is the cost? And is one greater than the other?
Great. We also have another one from Jason, who's within the banking field in London. He says, no one likes sales calls, especially as many consider it time-consuming. How often would you contact your customers regarding opportunities and promotions? And how are you meant to know when you're about to cross the limit by contacting them?
Okay, well, I suppose I did touch on this in terms of the 5 sales triggers that I mentioned earlier. And first of all, I definitely would encourage you, if you have the resources, and it sounds like if you're in the banking field, you're probably part of a bigger company, so it's possible that you would be to have something like a company newsletter every 2 weeks. I have mentioned that I send out a blog post on my blog, thepositiveeconomist.com, and I do it every 2 weeks. And I found that it's been a great way to keep our company and our offering to the forefront of our customers' minds. But because there's an unsubscribe button at the very bottom, I can also measure how many people are dropping off, and that is how I've actually measured when people are getting sick of listening to me. And if they are, well then I reduce the number of blog posts that we're sending out, and you know, there's going to be some level of fall off anyway. But what I would do is basically trial and error. The second thing that I would say is that, you know, when we talk about sales calls, or we talk about when we're crossing limits, nobody gets sick of listening to you as long as you're giving them something of value. So if it is, for example, a blog post I've mentioned about that, if it's something of interest to them, they will read it, or at least they won't delete it, or at the very, very least they won't unsubscribe. But rather than calling people just to sell to them, how often do you call them to do something that would solely be of value to them without ever having a sales agenda? Like I mentioned earlier about inviting them to come to an event of interest in their field. Or maybe, how about, if some of your very good customers, how about contacting them with people that they might be interested in doing business with, and simply making introductions across your network? Just something of value, that is when people won't get sick of listening to you, and you won't cross the limit. Now, as I say, as long as you give people a route so that they can politely reject you, like an unsubscribe button or something of this approach, then you'd figure it out. But what I would say is, don't worry about crossing the limit too early. They'll tell you, and in that case, if you do cross the limit with them, they probably weren't going to buy from you anyway. So I would say trial and error, just keep your eyes and ears open. Your customers are good at articulating their views.
Thank you, Susan. I believe we have one more, time for one more. That would be Paddy, who's a self-employed business owner from Essex. He says, financial goals are a must for every business to prosper. How far ahead should you plan your goals? Would it be better to work on a short-term manageable goal, or a larger long-term project with a bigger return?
It's actually quite difficult to answer that one. I really do think it depends on the goal itself. In my case, and this is only to do with me and the way I set up the business and the people that I employ, I generally set goals for a year away. I read a great piece in the Financial Times very recently, a fantastic exercise that a company executed. What they did was that they took their team, they split them in two, and they asked one half of the team to come up with what it would be like if they achieved each and every goal that they had set out this time next year. And then they asked the other team, the other half of the team, to articulate the discussion of what it would be like if they failed on every metric next year. And basically they had both the carrot and the stick in the one conversation and reverse engineered from there. Personally, I prefer the larger goals because they create a bit of excitement. It's really exciting if you start the question off of, imagine if we did achieve X, Y, and Z, which are, the really, really big, exciting goals that would have such an impact across the organization, would increase people's bonuses, increase their job security, and all these sorts of things. When you have that level of excitement about something, it creates the enthusiasm to really pursue them then with vigor. And then what I would do is I would break them down. So, for example, I would break a sales goal down to leads. Okay, so say, for example, I am converting 1 out of 2 prospects. So for every 2 people that I propose, one of them is accepting them. And I want 20 new customers in the year ahead. And then I say, okay, well, if I want 20 new customers at a conversion ratio of 1 out of 2, well, then I need 40 new leads. Okay, next, how am I going to create those 40 new leads? What are the marketing activities that I'm going to pursue in order to do that? And then from there, well, what is the plan for those marketing activities? So say, for example, it's creating events, It is creating a social media campaign. It is starting a PR campaign. What's the plan for each and every one of those things? How could I set up my Trello board for each and every one of those things? Who's going to take care of what? And then I would finish that conversation on what are the actions that each people involved in that process could do next week. And of course, please remember, it's so important to remember, why are we doing this? So what would be the I suppose, the pleasure points, or what would be the reward that each person would get if we achieve that target by the end of the year? And that is how you create excitement. That leads to short-term enthusiasm. If short-term enthusiasm leads to smaller achievements, then you are absolutely on the road to success.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for giving us an insight into your steps on how to take control of your finances. It's been a pleasure. To view our upcoming events, jobs, career advice, and blogs, please visit www.morganmckinley.co.uk and follow us on Twitter @MorganMcKinley using #SuccessSeries and #CareerAlly. We look forward to receiving your feedback and hope you have a pleasant evening.